Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. This is part 17 of the Tafsir book, Tadabbur al-Quran, Pondering over the Quran by Amin Islahi. Verses 8 to 16. Thematic continuity. In the following verses, yet another group of unbelievers is introduced. Allah the Most High says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم ومن الناس من يقول آمنا بالله وباليوم الآخر وما هم بمؤمنين. And there are some people who claim we believe in Allah and the last day, although they are not believers. خادعون الله والذين آمنوا وما يخدعون إلا أنفسهم وما يشعرون. They seek to deceive Allah and the believers, though they deceive only themselves, but they realize not. في قلوبهم مرض فزادهم الله مرضا ولهم عذاب أليم بما كانوا يكذبون. There is sickness in their hearts, so Allah increased their sickness, and a painful punishment awaits them because of the lies they keep telling. وَإِذَا قِيلَ لَهُمْ لَا تُفْسِدُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ قَالُوا إِنَّمَا نَحْنُ مُصْلِحُونَ. And when it is said to them, do not spread corruption on earth, they say, we are the ones who put things right. أَلَا إِنَّهُمْ هُمُ الْمُفْسِدُونَ وَلَكِنْ لَا يَشْعُرُونَ. Indeed, they are the ones who spread corruption, but they do not realize it. وَإِذَا قِيلَ لَهُمْ آمِنُوا كَمَا آمَنَ النَّاسُ قالوا أَنُؤْمِنُ كَمَا آمَنَ السُّفَهَاءُ أَلَا إِنَّهُمْ هم السُّفَهَاءُ وَلَكِنْ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. And when it is said to them, believe as others have believed, they say, shall we believe as fools believe? Indeed, they are the foolish ones, but they do not know. وَإِذَا لَقُوا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا قَالُوا آمَنَّا وَإِذَا خَلَوْا إِلَى شَيَاطِينِهِمْ قَالُوا إِنَّا مَعَكُمْ إِنَّمَا نَحْنُ مُسْتَهْزِئُونَ. And when they meet those who believe, they say, we believe. But when they are alone in the company of their devils, i.e. devilish allies, they say, we are with you. We were only mocking these people. Allah يستهزئ بهم ويمدهم في طغيانهم يعمهون. Allah will put them in derision, and He gives them rope in their trespassing, leaving them to wander blindly in their transgression. أولئك الذين اشتروا الضلالة بالهدى فما ربحت تجارتهم وما كانوا مهتدين. They are the ones who have bartered away guidance for error, but their transaction has not brought them any gain, and they were not the ones to find guidance. Who are the people mentioned in verses 8 to 16? The previous verses 1 to 7 introduced two groups, those who believed and those who rejected faith. A third group has now been introduced. While basically amongst the rejectors of faith, in certain respects, they belong to a class of their own. Who are these people? Generally, it is understood to be a group of hypocrites. The problem with this view, however, is that the hypocrites were always eager to keep their real identity secret. The hypocrites were always eager to keep their identity secret and ostensibly tried their best to remain within the fold of Islam and the Muslim community. They tried to conceal in their hearts whatever animosity or malice they might have had towards Islam and Muslims. It was only at certain critical moments that this malice would come out to the surface. The group mentioned here, however, is clearly different from the ordinary hypocrites, since neither their hearts were with the Muslims nor did they agree with them verbally. For instance, these people claimed to believe in Allah and the Day of Judgment, but were not even ready to make a verbal declaration of faith in the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and the Quran. Moreover, they considered themselves superior to Muslims. When asked to believe as others believe, they openly described the Muslims as fools. For these reasons, it would be wrong to consider these people as belonging to the ordinary run of hypocrites. They are a special case. If they are not from the ordinary hypocrites, who are they? We believe this was a group of Jews at the time in Medina whose attitude and role in their fight against Islam was somewhat different from the Quraysh polytheists and unbelievers. The latter were not even ready to listen or consider the message of the Prophet, peace be upon him. Their minds were closed. Unlike them, this group wanted to fight Islam by following an apparently more compromising and expedient strategy. This section of the Jewish community felt grieved because their books had prophesied that the final prophet was to come from among the descendants of Ishmael, not Israel. The actual fulfillment of this prophecy in the person of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, the steady growth of Islam, and the tremendous popularity of the Prophet among the Arabs only served to make them all the more jealous and bitter. As the message of the Prophet, peace be upon him, continued to spread, they realized that the religious leadership of the world was slipping away from the hands of the descendants of Israel and would soon pass on to the descendants of Ishmael. Sensing this, they were driven mad with envy and anger. How could Allah bless the descendants of Ishmael and not them? They believed that they alone deserved this divine blessing and honor. As the blessings of Allah upon the descendants of Ishmael multiplied, so did their anger and jealousy. This group fully shared all these feelings against Islam and the Prophet with the rest of the Jewish community. They did not, however, consider it wise to fight against the rising tide of Islam through a policy of outright rejection, but were rather anxious for a sort of compromise between Islam and Judaism. They wanted the Muslims to accept them as believers and worshippers of God, because as far as belief in God and the Judgment Day was concerned, they also believed in both these truths, like the Muslims. The Muslims, they argued, would believe in Muhammad as a prophet sent by God and in the book brought by him as divine revelation. They, however, should not be expected to subscribe to this belief, as it would bring to an end the atmosphere of religious tolerance that at the time prevailed in the land. On the basis of this argument, they presented themselves as reformers who only wanted to set things right. In other words, their refusal to accept Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and the Quran was in order not to create disruption and disorder. Instead, it was purely an effort to reform and set things right, for they wanted to prevent the anarchy and conflict allegedly created by this new prophethood and the new message. Bearing in mind this analysis of the mental makeup and background of this group, we begin to realize and appreciate the subtle beauty and eloquence of the language of these Quranic verses. The real designs of these opponents of Islam have been exposed. The severe Quranic reprimand that their machinations evoked was most appropriate and timely. The apparent harshness of the words used by the Quran may be considered by some to run counter to its advice elsewhere on the manner of inviting people to Allah. The Quran has taught us to invite people to the way of the sustainer with wisdom and goodly preaching. Concerning the people of the book in particular, it stresses that any discussion on religion with them must be conducted in a most beautiful manner. Why then has the Quran used words like foolish and mischief mongers to refer to a group from among the people of the book? Why has it called their leaders devils and satans? In answer to this, we would like to point out that these words are not used when calling them to Islam. They are only used towards the very end when, by their persistent refusal, hostility, and conspiracies against Islam, they had proved that they were morally dead, and their hearts were sealed against all goodness, faith, and belief. These words are primarily addressed to those who valued their faith and religion, to caution them against their opponents' real designs, and to show them how low these self-styled chosen people, the erstwhile inheritors of divine trust and fallen morality and spirituality, had fallen morally and spiritually. They were charged by Allah to reform the world, but instead were now busy in actively promoting mischief and corruption. Jesus too had to confront a similar mindset. Compared to the Quran, the words that Jesus used for such Jewish contemporaries are far more harsh. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you are like whitewashed tombs, which outwardly appear beautiful, but within they are full of dead men's bones and all uncleanliness. Matthew 23 to 27. And you serpents, you generation of vipers, how are you to escape being sentenced to hell? Matthew 23, 33. Word study and explanation. ومن الناس من يقول آمنا بالله وباليوم الآخر وما هم بمؤمنين يخادعون الله والذين آمنوا وما يخدعون إلا أنفسهم وما يشعرون. And there are some people who claim, we believe in Allah and the last day, although they are not believers. They seek to deceive Allah and the believers, though they deceive only themselves, but they realize not. من الناس. The word الناس in verse 8, meaning people or humankind, is a generic noun, but in the present context, it clearly refers to a specific group, namely those Jews that conspired against the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and the message of truth. يخادعون Allah. The verb خدع in verse 9 means to try to outwit or deceive someone, irrespective of whether the attempt succeeds or not. In reference to Allah, the word يخادعون means that in vain they seek to deceive Allah. However, by thus trying to deceive Allah, they deceive only themselves. No one can deceive Allah, but in trying to do so, a person ends up deceiving only himself. وَمَا يَشْعُرُونَ. The verb شعر is used for discerning something tangible. Its use here is meant to point out the obvious fact that any attempt to deceive is nothing but self-delusion. The minds of these people, despite their arrogance and their claims to cleverness and cunning, are so befogged that they cannot perceive this obvious truth. This is because they have not yet experienced the evil consequences of their folly. في قلوبهم مرض فزادهم الله مرضا وَلَهُمْ عَذَابٌ أَلِيمٌ بِمَا كَانُوا يَكْذِبُونَ. There is a sickness in their hearts, so Allah increased their sickness, and a painful punishment awaits them because of the lies they keep telling. The word marad, sickness, is generally used in the Quran in two senses. One, rancor and envy, and two, hypocrisy. One, rancor and envy. Two, hypocrisy. Where it is used along with the word nifaq, hypocrisy, it always signifies rancor and envy. Where it is used on its own, it either covers both the senses or is used in either of the two senses as defined by its context. Considering its present context, the word here clearly signifies envy and malice. فَزَادَهُمُ اللَّهُ مَرَضًا. The act of increasing their jealousy here is attributed by Allah to Himself. However, it refers to the divine law according to which a person who insists on nursing malice in his heart rather than purifying it to receive the light of faith and guidance will find himself in circumstances that further add to his venom, envy, and rancor. وإذا قيل لهم لا تفسدوا في الأرض قالوا إنما نحن مصلحون ألا إنهم هم المفسدون ولكن لا يشعرون. And when it is said to them, do not spread corruption on earth, they say, we are the ones who put things right. Indeed, they are the ones who spread corruption, but they do not realize it. Corruption on earth, facade fil ard. Ifsad fil ard, causing mischief on earth, is a specific Quranic term which means subverting the truth and the system based on it. A system founded on the worship of Allah and obedience to His commandments and laws as conveyed by His prophets. The Quran says that in the physical universe, the will of the all-powerful God alone prevails, and this keeps it together and functioning smoothly. If anyone other than God had any power or say in its running, it would collapse and disorder would ensue. Similarly, in moral and spiritual life, if anyone other than Him were to have any say or the right to legislate and be worshipped and obeyed, it would utterly subvert the nature of morality and ultimately poison the entire fabric of civilization and culture. As such, any effort that seeks to encourage this process is, in the sight of the Quran, abetting corruption and mischief on earth, even if apparently motivated by good intentions and done in the name of reform or setting things right. وإذا قيل لهم آمنوا كما آمن الناس قالوا أنؤمن كما آمن السفهاء ألا إنهم هم السفهاء ولكن لا يعلمون وإذا لقوا الذين آمنوا قالوا آمنا وإذا خلوا إلى شياطينهم قالوا إنا معكم إنما نحن مستهزئون. And when it is said to them, believe as others have believed, they say, shall we believe as fools believe? Indeed, they are the foolish ones, but they do not know. And when they meet those who believe, they say, we believe. But when they are alone in the company of their devils, i.e. devilish allies, they say, we are with you, we were only mocking these people. The words, كَمَا آمَنَ النَّاسُ, as others have believed, refer to the Muslims who believed in Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. The term shaitaan and its meaning, the word shaitaan is an intensive form and means one who is hasty, hot-tempered, irascible, mischievous, and insolent. These characteristics are found in human beings as well as in jinns. Here it refers to those Jewish leaders who were playing a leading part in the mischievous game of undermining Islam. Allah يستهزئ بهم ويمدهم في طغيانهم يعمهون. Allah will put them in a derision. Allah will put them in derision and He gives them rope in their trespassing, leaving them to wander blindly in their transgression. The word madda means to give respite or latitude. The verse means that they are not taken to task but allowed to continue in their set ways. When finally called to account, they will have no excuse for the evil and corruption. The word يمدهم في طغيانهم, the words يمدهم في طغيانهم explain what is meant by Allah يستهزئ بهم. Allah will put them in derision. These people were complacent and happy in the belief that they had succeeded in deceiving both Allah and the Muslims. They failed to perceive that by thus trying to deceive Allah and His Prophet, and by reverting to their evil ways, they were only harming themselves. They could not comprehend that this attempt at deceiving the Prophet who sought to show them light was in fact sheer self-delusion and foolishness. They deceived themselves and not the Prophet who sought to guide them to the light of truth. أولئك الذين اشتروا الضلالة بالهدى فما ربحت تجارتهم وما كانوا مهتدين. They are the ones who have bartered away guidance for error, but their transaction has not brought them any gain, and they were not the ones to find guidance. The verb ishtara means to purchase. Whenever a person buys a thing by paying a price for it, he clearly gives preference to it over the price that he pays. That is how the word ishtara has also acquired a secondary sense of giving preference to something over another. The Quran uses it in this sense at various places. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen.